Greetings, today on my Focus RS I'm installing the shifter cable bracket bushings from SiCo Developments. Alright then, here we go, the cable bracket bushings or transmission bracket bushings. These are from SiCo Developments. You can get pretty much the same design from various places. These are the last piece of the puzzle, certainly that I am planning anyway, for the transmission or shifter upgrades on my RS, and they will be the third type of bushing upgrade that I have done. First we did the cable end bushings, then we did the shifter base bushings, and that just leaves these to solidify all of the bushings, and these are in the little bracket that the shifter cables sort of sit in. What we should be doing then is removing any last bit of sloppiness, any last bit of excess movement from those little rubber bushings that comes stock in the cable bracket, and yeah, it should just top everything off really nicely. They are super duper light. They are made of machined billet aluminium, so you know they're so light they could blow away in the wind, you know, so we're not going to be adding any weight. And yeah, we should just see extra crisp shifting, improved accuracy, and just overall feel should, you know, have that little extra cherry on top, that final piece of the puzzle. Like I was saying, you get 3 of these thicker pieces with the small centerpiece, and then you get 3 of these thinner ones with the larger centerpiece, and that is because there are 3 bushings that we're replacing, and these are basically top and bottom. As you can see, they fit together like that. We do of course have to get into the engine bay and remove a couple of things in order to get access to the shifter cable bracket. So yeah, we'll jump over to the car and get started. Alright then, first thing we got to do is pull the intake, so we'll pop this off, just push in a little grey tab and pull it off. It's then in a little slot around here in a rubber grommet, so we just need to wiggle that outwards. Then in here, it's going to be impossible for you to see, but it's also clipped into a little plastic thing, so that is now loose. Next thing is hose clamps, so going to loosen this one, and we're going to loosen this one, and for that we require a 7mm. You can either use a 7mm socket, a 7mm spanner, or you can even use a flathead if you should so desire. So now we need to remove this bolt right here, which requires an 8mm. It's not in super tight, so you just kind of loosen it and then you can get the rest with your fingers. Okay. So now we can get this out all in one piece with this. We'll just leave that on for now, or if you want to, you can of course take that off as well at the same time. Okay then, now we'll continue pulling the rest of the airbox just because we need to get into this area here and it's just slightly obscuring it, so we might as well. So first thing we can do is we can open up that there rubbery thing. So with this off, we do need to then pop this bit of rubber off the end of this little plastic tab. So we just literally pull it off there like that. So now you can see that's totally loose. So you need to make sure to remove our electrical connection here, so just push a little tab in and pull it out. And then also it's got a little plastic Christmas tree thing that's holding the actual cable into this plastic section right here, so just get it and give it a firm yank. It should come out. So now we're ready to pull the actual airbox, so it should just be a case of giving it a swift yank up. It is just sort of, if you can see here, it's just like plastic inside little rubber grommets, you know, it's not like secured in beyond what we've already removed. Just need to pull it upwards and out. Right, next thing we got to do is we need to pop our cable ends off using a trim tool, a metal trim tool like this, to get in underneath there and just go pang to get them off, and that applies for both of them, that one and that one, or indeed a flathead screwdriver if that's what you've got. There we go. Alright then, now we can release the cables from the bracket. So if you can see the top one here, if we just pull back on that little tab and then it just pulls up and we can just move it right out of the way, and that also then allows us to get in at the other one back here, which is a little hard to see. I'll move my light. You can kind of see it's the exact same thing right behind it. It's like a grippy thing, so you need to pull it back, and then this one sort of comes up at an angle, so sort of like that way. Alright, there we go. That is the other cable then released. In order to give myself a bit of a better angle, I did unscrew the bottom of my catch can. Obviously, if you don't have a catch can in this position, you won't have this assembly in here, so you'll be okay. But yeah, we have that loose now anyway. One last thing that is like attached into the bracket is the clutch line, which is this sort of yellowy looking thing right here. It's just in a rubber thing. We just need to pop it upwards. Just slowly, gradually, carefully, and that will pop out, as you can see. So now we're ready to get the bolts out of there. All right, the 3 bolts then, so you can see one right there, then there's one there to the right. Then the third one, if you can see just where that bit of metal folds over, it's kind of like slightly awkward. You can kind of see it there. So that's the most awkward one. So I'm going to go for the most awkward one first, because then once you get that out, then it should be relatively plain sailing. So each of these are 10 mil. At least for the awkward one, I'm going to use this 10 mil combination spanner, which ratchets and also has an angled top. So we should be able to get that awkward one no problem, hopefully. There we go. Okay, so I've got it out far enough. I should be able now to get in just with my hand and get that removed. Obviously, being careful not to drop it. There we go, that's it out. There we go. Okay, so then I'll just crack on with these other 2. Alright, so that's another one out. Then for this last one, I'm going to use a 10 mil socket and extension, just because it'll be a little easier than using the spanner, because of the way that this one is like located in between 2 bits of the bracket. Using a spanner would be just a little bit awkward. Okay, here we go, and that's the last one out. So now we just need to manipulate this out, so lifting up the cables out of the way, getting up and over the clutch line. Can probably go back down a bit underneath and up and around, and we're out. Here we are then, our bracket out, and you can see it's a pretty sort of mad shaped bracket. That one is the fold over of, it's kind of in like that, so that one was where the most awkward one was. So you can see our existing bushings then, they have like a steel bit going through the middle, but then they are just squishy looking rubber. So we're going to get those out now. So all we have to do to get those out really is to push them from below, to push the metal piece out, push a little bit of steel out, and then, see, I can even do it just with my thumb, and that just pops right out. Go. So there's one out, and you can see it's just completely squishy, so this will remove any excess movement that remains in this bracket area. So that's pretty sweet. So now all we've got to do is remove these other 2 bushings. With the old bushings out of there, we can see now how our new bushings are going to go into our bracket. So as we saw before, we have a thinner piece and a thicker side, right? And they of course mate together. Now, the way around it these go, if you imagine this is the bracket, top and bottom, the thin parts you want to be on bottom, and the thick parts you want to be on top, mating through like that. And the reason for that is you want the thinnest amount of material closest to where the bracket is going to be bolted in. Otherwise, you would be sitting slightly raised up, sort of on a pedestal, which could potentially move a bit. You can sort of also see in the stock setup. So we had our rubber bushing here, and then we had our little metal insert. So if you push this in through there, to the way it was, and then match up, this is the bottom, this is the top, the metal part where the bolts secured down onto. So that's top, that's bottom. So our new bushing, the thin section, is exactly the same as that lower section of rubber, and the thick part, once you have the bit of rubber and you have the metal top and match that up, exactly the same size. So that just kind of proves that this is bottom and this is top. So now we can prep these in our bracket. Right, so you may be thinking, and quite rightly, that if you have that here and you have that here, and that is then where we want to have it as we go into the car, if I just let that go, that's gonna fall off. So the way around this, I mean, you've got really a couple of options. You can either very carefully set the small parts into the car, possibly then get that down very carefully and then very carefully on here and then in with your bolts, but that would be difficult and you run the risk of dropping these. So what I am going to do is I am going to do kind of a similar thing to what I did with the shifter base bushings whenever I was getting those in the car. I'm going to clean up around the holes where our bushings go through, and then I'm going to use just a little dab of glue just to hold the two sides together. Go and have a cup of tea, and then whenever I come back out, it will be just sort of secured in here, and I can quite easily then put this back into the car and then get our bolts back in place. Alright then, nice. Now that glue has set, we have our bushings in there, ready to go, not going to fall out. So yes, now we can get our bracket put back into the car. So it's just going to be a case of manipulating it carefully in here, getting our shifter cables and clutch cable, of course, up over above it. Okay, I've got the bracket in there kind of loose, so as you can see, you know, it's not connected to anything, but I've got it in approximately the right place. So a couple of things to note here. You remember we popped the clutch line out. Now it is actually in its own little mini bracket thing. The bottom of it is like right there, if you can see. Now that needs to be underneath the bracket, but obviously above the hole where the bolt goes through. So we have to have that positioned, sort of wrapped around the bracket and then bolt through there. So that's the main thing to think about here. Make sure that that is properly aligned. So first thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to get all three of our bolts here, and I'm going to get them in just with my fingers, get everything, make sure that it's all nicely lined up, and then we'll tighten up fully. Okay, there we go. That is all three of our bolts in and fully tightened. And you know, if I try and manipulate that, that is completely rigid, which is what we want. Just a little note about the order of putting the bolts back in. Realistically, you can do them in whatever order you desire, but I would say if you want to do them in a particular order, I would go with the one beside the clutch line first, just to make sure that you have the clutch line bracket lined up with our cable bracket, and then go for the one here in the middle, just because that's the easiest one, and then you'll have two out of the three like aligned, which will make the awkward run round at the back a lot easier to find the hole to get the bolt into, because obviously you can't really see a whole lot of what you're doing in there whenever you've got your hand in there. But yeah, once you get them all started, it's pretty easy. You just tighten them all up and we are good to go. So yes, now we can get our cables back in place. So starting with the furthermost back one, line it up, pull back, and then it should click down in. There we go. Don't know if you heard that nice reassuring click, but it did click into the bracket, and of course that should then line up there, which it does. So then we can get the big one that has like the creamy end, which goes into the frontal part of here. So just exactly the same, we'll get it lined up with the bracket, pull back on the pulley tab thing, push it down, and it clicks, which is great, and that should line up to there, which it does. And then we can give a quick check that the rubber thing is back in for the clutch line into its bracket, which it is. So that's great. Now all we need to do is to click these back in to the ball ends, and then we will be pretty much done with all the shifter stuff. Oh, there we go, that's that one clicked on. Well, there we are, that is both cable ends. Click back into the ball ends. So essentially that is it, but just since we were yanking around on our cables, I'm just going to reset the neutral position. So all I need to do is this little plastic thing, just pry it out either side, like up and down, click it out the way until it clicks. Then we need to jump into the car. Inside the car, what we want to do is just pop that into 4 and then jump back out, then pop this little plastic thing back in. There we go. And once that's back in, that is a neutral position reset, just for peace of mind. That is basically the install done. I just need to put everything back in that we took out, so the bottom of my catch can and then the intake, and then that will be installation complete. Well, there we go, that is the installation finished of our shifter cable bracket bushings from SiCo Developments. The installation was relatively simple, not too difficult. A couple of fiddly little bits getting the bracket out and that bolt that's sort of in sideways, but really nothing too advanced. So I'm pretty happy with it. You saw how rigid it is now, and before with those rubber things there was definitely a little bit of extra movement. So that is great. It should crisp up our shifts just that little bit more and really round off our shifter upgrades. Like I was saying before, that is the last piece of the shifter puzzle. So yes, all that's left for me to do is to get out on the road, give it a go, see how it feels, and I'll report back to you in the future. And I hope you liked that, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please do like, share, and subscribe for more content to come very, very soon. Thank you once again. Goodbye.